Beautiful. It's a joy to be able to sing again, isn't it? Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Manhattan, Kansas, UUFM. To those here in the sanctuary and all those joining us on Zoom, welcome. At UUFM, we seek spiritual evolution as an inclusive congregation known widely as a safe haven and vibrant force for social justice. We act for a better world with agency, inspiration, and courage to learn to love the world and each other a little more in the lived times we have together. And so I welcome you, whatever path brought you here, and I ask you to join us today with an open heart and open mind, and I greet you with the same. We have a number of events coming up to educate ourselves and engage politically around our values. Tomorrow is Indigenous Peoples Day, which will someday be a national holiday. We are going together to the K-State Indigenous Peoples Day Conference held at the KSU Alumni Center all day tomorrow. We're meeting folks from the First Congregational Church around 8:30 a.m. Please join us. On Tuesday and Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m. here at the Fellowship, you can come write postcards to voters to encourage them to vote, to defend democracy, public education, and reproductive freedom. You can also stop by to pick up postcards to write in the comfort of your own home. On Thursday, also at 7 p.m. on Zoom and also live stream here at the Fellowship, join Kansas Interfaith Action for a forum about defending democracy with several prominent speakers. You can come here at 6 to write some postcards, then stay for the panel at 7. As we arrive in this time and place, let us awaken to the true history of this land within the context of ongoing colonialism and dispossession of Indigenous peoples and nations from their lands. Today, let us be in active awareness of the traumatic wars we decry, the missing and murdered Indigenous women, the man camps built by the oil and gas industry on the edge of reservations, violent suppression of the water keepers, and ignorance of the call for land back. We watch closely the case now before the US Supreme Court, Brackeen v. Handlin, and voice our concern that by overturning precedent, the court could gut the rights granted by the Indian Child Welfare Act, a 43-year-old federal law passed in the wake of decades of state-led, anti-tribal forced separation of Native American children from their families. May we wake up and stay awake to these truths, which are so consistently hidden and ignored. I will light the chalice. The order of service has changed a little bit today from what's in your program. We will now have the offering. Each month, UUFM directs collections to a community organization that serves those in need with the Helping Hands Fund. We've placed an offertory basket at the entrance to the sanctuary. You can also donate by going to our website and direct your donations to any of our social support funds. Donations not designated to a particular fund will go toward our Helping Hands recipient for the month of October, the Crisis Center. The center was founded in 1979 to provide free and confidential services to victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. 24/7, 365 days a year. The center serves Clay, Geary, Marshall, Pottawatomie, and Riley counties, and the Fort Riley military installation, and also administers the statewide Kansas Crisis Hotline. Thank you all for your support. I'd like you to take this time now also to write your joy and sorrow on the slips of the paper that are in the sanctuary or in the chat on Zoom. We'll share them after the time for all ages. For the offertory music, the UUFM drum circle has come out of retirement to play and sing the Lakota drum song, Wakantanka. The Lakota lyrics will be projected. Please sing along.
I will introduce things. I think this mic is on, right? We're really happy to have our retired drum group come out of hiding. And of course, we had more, but we have, a nice showing today. And I brought all my instruments, and some of them are passing them out, and because we're going to do it together. As, let's see, the words will be on the screen for this song. Yeah, there it is. In Lakota, there's translation in English on the right, but we sing in Lakota. So, and some of us know it, but we'll probably maybe check on the screen also a little bit. But you're welcome to try it along with us, in singing. Mainly, I want you to just feel if you can. I will lead the drum beat. And the drum beat goes like this. We don't have to pound or anything. We're just going to say, I want you to play, so it feels good. Let's try this together. If you have a rattle, you can just shake it. If you have a drum, you can just beat it a little bit. And when we're ready, I'll start, and you can come along, try and sing along with me. Let's just do this for a little bit. I don't hear everybody. Great. Great. Okay, I think you have the main beat. As soon as everybody gets an instrument, we'll start, and I'll start you. If I do a little different rhythm, you can just keep doing the same one, or you can do whatever you want. Just try to coordinate it a little bit. Okay, here we go. Wakantanka toka heya che wakielo hey. Wakantanka toka heya che wakielo hey. Akuelo wani hata toka. Toka Great job. Welcome around to the lectures.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a great slide. Okay, thank you. I just see a bunch of, well, young people come forward, please. We're going to read a book today called The Two-Legged Creature. It's an Oto story. It's about why man is different from animals and why we have two particularly, hey, thanks for joining me. You can see yourself right up there, maybe. Yeah, somewhere. There you are. Okay, cool. So this is a story about how man became different from other animals. Man used to be like other animals, but man started acting a little bit different and got separated, but a couple of animals became and stayed friends. Here we go. Let's find out why. And we'll read better without these. How does that work? Reading better without the glasses. And there's some pretty pictures. You can look in here. And you and I can share them, but they won't be able to see them. Okay, here it is. My people are from the woodlands and prairies. They saw the world we live in today was not always the way it is now. There was a very different way of life before the cities were here. The world was magical back then. Once, look at that, those deer, and a bear and an Indian. Once upon a time, the world was ruled by creatures, animals, insects, birds, and fish of every kind. And they lived together in peace and happiness without argument and fear. With these creatures lived a two-legged one we now call man, and all the other creatures showed him how to live. Oh, yeah. What's this creature? Do you know what this is? Yeah, it's got a black stripe down, or white stripe. A skunk, right, a skunk. There were no towns or houses anywhere. There were no bicycles or cars because there was only one man at the time. Earth was very clean and the sky was very clear. What was magical about this time was that all the animals, insects, birds, fish, and the two-legged creatures spoke one language that they all understood. They spoke in a friendly way to one another. They called each other brother for a long time and sister. For a long time, they lived peacefully with one another. Each animal, insect, bird, and fish had another name besides brother. And each one, look at that. What's that? Well, it's kind of hard to tell. I think it's a bear or a big dog. Each animal, insect, what are those? I don't know.
I think it's a bird.
I think you're right. Those are birds. Okay, each animal, insect, bird, and fish had another name besides brother, and each one had a special place in the world back then. There were bear, fox, beetle, termite, bluebird, robin, and many others. Man was called the two-legged creature. All of these creatures lived close together then, sharing the earth and sky with one another. Back then, man was much like the other creatures living on the earth. He lived on the ground like an insect, ate leaves and plants like most of the animals, and climbed trees to gaze at the birds. Man learned how to live by watching the animals. They taught him everything, but after a while, man began to act differently. One morning, he woke up and crawled out of his home in the ground. Snow laid all around, shined into his eyes. He brushed out the bright light and saw a bear go by. Where are you going, brother? Man asked. Fishing, answered the bear. May I go along? If you wish, brother, agreed the bear. He followed Bear in the deep snow. The lake was spotted with ice and the water was freezing cold. Dark little birds played in the water. Now please be careful, advised Bear to Man. You have no fur to protect you from the cold as I have. You do not even have the oily feathers of those little birds playing over there. Birds and bears do not freeze, but man's a little different. Man didn't listen. He wanted to play in the water like the birds were doing. Bear stepped into deep water and shivered. Behind him, he heard a great splash. Man lay shivering in the icy water. His face was blue and his teeth chattered loudly. I told you, brother, said Bear. Now look at what you have done. Bear pulled Man out of the icy water and all the birds helped him to shore, tugging on his buckskin clothing and with their tiny sharp beaks. On the shore, Bear dried Man and tried to warm him with his fur. After that, Bear wanted nothing more to do with Man. He doesn't listen to us any longer, Bear said angrily. The other animals were now feeling the same way toward Man because he had started to act very differently. One time he said to Skunk, my brother Skunk, how you stink. Now Skunk had been thinking to himself for some time that Man stunk very badly too, and all the other animals had agreed with Skunk. Skunk had never said this though because he was polite and well-mannered, but in answer to Man's unkind words, Skunk said, my brother, that is exactly what I was thinking about you. You have a very strange odor. Besides becoming impolite and unruly, Man always whined and cried when something did not go his way. None of the animals did that. It was so disgraceful. Tears welled up in Man's eyes all the time over every little ache and pain, or when one of the animals, insects, birds, or fish said no to him. They all began to scurry away when Man came around because he acted this way. Man started to become mean to the animals, birds, insects, and fish. Whenever he could, he killed spiders with one swipe of his hand. He happily squashed insects under his big, clumsy feet. He began to toss pebbles and rocks at birds and fish. He kicked at fox and others, sometimes killing them too. None of the creatures could stand this awful behavior any longer. Enough of him, they said. We can no longer call him brother. It was bad enough when he stopped listening to us. Now he is beginning to act as if he is the only one who lives in this world. He has become too destructive. He acts as if he wants to kill all of us. They called a meeting to discuss Man's behavior. At the meeting, Bear growled, Man is destroying all of us inside. Skunk stood up and said, he stinks real bad too. A tiny black bird stood and paced before the group on stick legs, saying, he's really not very bright, you know. He's silly enough to freeze if he falls into icy water or is out in a storm alone. All of us are able to survive in any weather, but not he. He's stupid. Stupid! Oh, he whines and cries all the time, said a beautiful gray deer. Animals behave so much better than that. All agreed that they didn't want Man to mingle with them any longer. The meeting lasted for several days and nights. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah. The meeting lasted for several days and nights because the animals could not agree on what to do with Man. He should live by himself, said Beaver. No, he would only die, Elk said. Though he would kill us, he is still our brother, and we do not wish him death. Finally, to bring the meeting to a close, Dog stood up and cleared his throat. You are all tired of this. I'll go with Man, he said. I'll try to keep him from bothering the rest of you. I'll try to keep him out of trouble. I'll stay by his side. The horse stood, neighed, and pawed the earth. Horse said, Dog and I come from the same family. He and I belong together. Because he is my little brother, I too will go with Man. We will keep him company and be his friend. The other animals, birds, and insects sighed in great relief. So this is how the two-legged creature separated from all the others and why dogs and horses are so close to people today. And there they are. Isn't that a great story? Do you have a dog? A cat? A horse? A fish? A teddy bear? A brother? There it is by Anna Lee Walters. Thank you.
Go in love, our hearts go with you. Go in joy, our hopes go too. Learn and love and grow in wisdom. Shine Go in love, our hearts go with you. Go in joy, our hopes go too. Learn in love and grow in wisdom. Shine your light in all we do. We've come now to the time in this service when we share our burdens and amplify our celebrations. Let us call up a spirit of generosity, vulnerability, courage, and compassion as we listen to what has been shared. Does anyone have a joy or concern here in the sanctuary or on Zoom?
First of all, I just want to say I'm really grateful today that we will be covered. So, and that everybody is here to welcome them and really not just acknowledge, but really be with them. The other thing is, we wanted to mention that this book,
Thank you. Beautiful. Thanks, Pat. I know Dan's out there. Did we have any joys or concerns on the Zoom?
We don't yet, so.
Okay. No, we got lucky today because it's always difficult on the sorrows, although I will miss your joys. But please breathe deeply now and join me for a silence as we honor what has been shared and what remains quietly healing within our hearts. I would like to begin to introduce our speaker today. We're going to watch a video where the Chicago's Field Museum of Natural History recently invited our guest speaker, Reuben Iron Horse-Kent, to display his ceramic artwork, which is based on his Iowa ancestral heritage. The museum's Facebook page highlights its own YouTube video filmed in Reuben's ceramic studio in White Cloud, Kansas. He is working with his hands and tools in the video as he briefly describes the actions involved in building a large pot using clay he harvested in the wild on nearby land.
Now, this is the original clay that was gathered out here in the wild, hunted it down, herbed it up. It's been silicified, and the shells have been added. Now, by putting this center hole and then beginning to work out, we're gonna make a pot out of this. Okay. Fairly slow process. I need just to see that bump moving through. Really thin there. Okay. So far, so good. What I did here was opened up the neck and left it a little thick. I'm using the side of my paddle, put this curve in there. Just had to go back and smooth out all the little indent. What we got here is this extra little tongue. And I really can't find my needles. I'm gonna go all traditional and use a fishbone. And we're gonna see how this works. Use my little deer rib, slightly modified. Now a little bit further. Just give it a form to put some pressure on it. And voila, this will be cleaned up and worked a little bit.
I'd like to introduce Reuben. Reuben Iron Horse-Kent is an enrolled member of the Iowa Nation of Kansas and Nebraska, with tribal ties to both Otwe and Kickapoo people. He was inducted into the Nebraska Alpha Chi Honor Society at Peru State College in Nebraska. He has displayed his flute playing and artwork in venues across the country. His works have been featured in several art books and have appeared in collections, including the Smithsonian American Indian Art Museum in Washington, D.C., the Institute of American Indian Arts in New Mexico, the Heritage Museum at Pine Ridge, South Dakota, the Southern Plains Indian Museum, Oklahoma, and recently in the Chicago Field Museum of Natural History in Illinois. Reuben's research and his ancestral indigenous heritage to the pre-contact Cahokia Mounds civilization in Illinois, east of St. Louis, Missouri, is opening doors in his present-day ceramic artwork. Reuben asserts that curiosity has been a driving force in his development and exploration of personal creativity in diverse mediums. Reuben?
Thank you, and good morning. It's a pleasure to be here this morning, take part in this service. Always an interesting experience for me. I'd like to begin by thanking Ms. Desmet for writing this wonderful introduction you've been looking at. It is such a fine tribute. I was looking forward to meeting this individual myself, hoping that we both can be here this morning. I need to put you on notice that I am a terrible presenter, but I will do what I can here. Before I get too far involved in my talk, let me soften up the room a little bit. This is what's called a Northern Plains style flute. I'm hoping that Mike will be able to pick this up. great for calming the mind a little bit. Very old instrument to this country. It's a little bit different from the Southern style flute, but they both have been used by different tribal groups for different purposes. I always knew that there was another instrument besides a drum, a rattle, a rasp. I was just surprised to see one at Haskell Indian Junior College offered as a module. Wonderful instructor. Dr. Nevakoya, Comanche individual. But I'm here to talk to you a little bit about what I call the colors of courage. You know, being an individual who's curious about a great many things in the world, especially as I hit middle age a little bit, I began to become more aware of the things that I had overlooked in my younger days and had accepted as testaments written in stone, truth, unfailable beliefs, a number of things that I just normally accepted, especially in my teenage, early 20s. And as I began to experience and see other things and notice that some of these things weren't always what they say, especially from some individuals who proposed and supported the things. So there was a slight dichotomy of what you say and what you do. As that became apparent to me, I began to become curious about a lot of the other things that I had been told as I come up through the educational systems, both parochial and public. So I spent my early part of my educational years in a place called St. Augustine's Indian Mission, a predominantly Catholic school in Winnebago, Nebraska, where I believe at one time I had the privilege of engaging in a rock fight with my relative over here, Ed. He was a townie and I was in the mission. Every once in a while we would meet at the boundaries of the school and exchange snowballs and rocks and other projectiles. Engaging in tribalism, because they were an other and we were us. And I did not ever really think about that until like after I had received a couple of rock hits and why are we doing this? However, I began to look at things and to note things, courage as a characteristics. You know, I've noticed that, especially after reading the ever popular The Red Badge of Courage. You know, and so why is it red? Why is it red? Why do we honor those that, you know, engage in sacrifice? When I always heard a great deal of talk about martyrdom, you know, but why do we honor those that are willing to create martyrs and not become martyrs? This split in what is said and what is done becomes a little more evident as you begin to think deeper into what you're told about courage. about the ability to perform things that you're told you need to do in order to become not only a valid but contributing member of society, especially a society that at times questions why you're even a part of society. You know, and it's always an awakening experience when you visit with people and they say, well, that's never happened to me. You know, that's true. Mayhaps because you don't stand out as much, you're not as noticeable, or you're a little bit different. You know, and this is what I've always enjoyed about the more cosmopolitan areas of Kansas, the bigger places, Manhattan, Fort Riley, Junction City, Topeka, Lawrence, Kansas City. As you look out across the neighborhoods, there's a much more varied community composition. And those little differences are, while they're more prevalent, they're not actually noticeable that much. Whereas you get into the more rural areas, suddenly certain individuals do stand out. And following that line of thought, you get thoughts like, what are you doing here? You know, my own personal experience traveling back to the reservation has been not filled, but some of the highlights of being pulled over and being questioned. What are you doing here? Where are you going? Who are you related to? Who do you know? And a whole lot of inconsequential questions that makes me wonder, would this happen to me? Did I, if I didn't make the effort to stand out, you know, to be proud of who I am, or to just practice who I am? You know, all these little elements that make up the things that I choose to make my political identity. And that's what I like about America today. You can choose to be who you want to be, unless it disagrees with the majority. And then we might have a discussion, you know, a debate, a conversation. But so oftentimes it turns into an uncivil shouting match until someone backs down, not because they're correct or they feel we get weary. I get weary of defending the things that I want to follow. It's as the story is, and that's what I liked about that Otto story. You know, the people just said, well, you know, he's getting overbearing. We'll just let him go off by himself, except for those creatures that choose to go with man. And as far as I know, human beings are the only intelligent or creatures intelligent enough to declare other members of their species as undesirable. Now, whether that speaks of intelligence or a lack of could be debatable. Yes, please. And you will have to excuse me because I am just recently celebrating a birthday, and as we go into our golden years, a lot of us discover that they're not quite as golden as we were told they would be. Wonderful, thank you. as we go through life, it takes sometimes a great deal of courage to decide what you want to make a stand for. Our choices are unlimited, but they're still our choices. You know, as things progress in contemporary society, not only in this country, but around the world, we begin to understand what resource. I'm overwhelmed. What resource management, what resource wars are beginning to develop. But at the same time, we understand, you know, we have a need and desire to do the things that we want to do. And trying to create that balance between the things that we want to do, the things that society says we have to do, and what we're comfortable with, getting to that point, that will take a monumental amount of courage. Because there are people and I hesitate on even saying leaders, they're elected representatives. They're responsible, they work for us. We are not their fiefs, we are not their serfs. And at that point, I want to, commend you on recognizing that MMIW, the land back movements, all the things that Indigenous people are, especially the water protectors, are, we've taken that challenge. I once heard one of the people I admire once. I said, Americans feel so powerless. There's so many of you. Whereas Native people, there are so few of us, but we don't feel powerless. We do not fear making statements. We don't need the only reason we carry a lot of weapons is because it seems like that's the only ideology that government understands, especially when it's dealing with Indigenous people. We saw that with the water protectors in the Dakotas when they were concerned because that pipeline was going across the reserve, going across underneath a water source. And you hear other people saying, well, what are they doing? This is good for our country. Not understanding that this is oil shale oil. This is not the cleanest type of energy. And it's being shipped to refineries on the Gulf Coast to be exported. It's not to be used here in this country. And there's few jobs other than constructing the pipeline. But they overlooked that. They accepted that it was good for the country. It's good for a few people. And we're all, as Indigenous people, we're stuck in this spider web that's been created as you are. And the best that I can do myself is buy a foreign-made vehicle that gets about 40 miles per gallon. I mean, just big enough. It's an enclosed motorcycle, actually. But it's very fuel efficient. I'm learning how to work on it. Although it would probably be good for the economy if I took it to a dealership. I'm not sure, because the mechanics need to eat too. So how does it work? What do we do? It's going to take a great deal of courage to decide that we need to change a little bit. We need to look at some of these corporate entities that decide for us how we need to live our lives. We need to look at the younger generations, and we have that problem within my tribe. We look at all the wonderful technology and we soak in these messages that are promoted. This is what you need to be successful. This is the thing, these are the things that you have to have in order to be socially acceptable. These are the things that are going to make you happy. And how do we, as an older generation, look at our younger generation and say, think about that. Because I can remember being that younger generation and looking at the older generation and say, what do they know? And that continued until we talked about the price of gasoline. And they said, well, when I was young, gasoline was 12 cents a gallon. And now I can look back at our younger generation, my younger generation, say, I can remember when gas was 29 cents a gallon. And a pack of cigarettes was 25 cents a pack. Fortunately, I'm really cheap, and I quit when it got to be $1. So, since I never really enjoyed smoking but doing construction, that was how people left you alone. You smoked a cigarette. That was the break. That was, leave him alone. So all these little social things that are happening and occurring to us in general, across the board, it's going to take a lot to look at what we want to do, what we need to do. I had gotten to a point where I took a Photoshop of a poem. Did you bring a copy of that poem, by the way? Any chance, Miss Embers? Tis good to be alone. This is called taking a break from your technology. When you take a Photoshop and then leave the phone outside. My wife is very, well, the phone is her second husband. Or it might be the first, I'm not sure. When my phone rings, it's, here, you got to, wait. That's why they have voicemail. If it's real important, they'll leave a voicemail. So but then she's also a teacher, so that she recognizes the importance of gathering information, sharing information, which is not in itself a bad thing. I think it just depends on the information, the ability to let go of information that is, what's that word? Superfluous, and the information that will have a total bearing on your life. And since I've returned to school, and it took a little bit of courage for me to go back to school at 64, and to sit in a classroom with youngsters that are just coming out of high school in order to acquire a BA, so that I could go on to an MFA, which I have yet to use, but I'm still gathering information. It's one of the things that really irritates me about watching biographies of people's lives, and they're still kicking. They're not done yet. Why are we looking at what they've done? Yes. And I think my time is just about up, and I really don't want to keep you from such a beautiful day outside. So 'Tis a good thing sometimes to be alone. Sit calmly down and look self in the face. Ransack the heart, search every secret place. Prayerful, uproot the baneful seeds there sown. Pluck out the weeds ere the full crop is grown. Gird up the loins afresh to run the race. Foster all noble thoughts, cast out the base. Thrust forth the bad and make the good thine own. Who has this courage thus to look within? Keep faithful watch and ward with inner eyes. Look within, keep faithful watch and ward with inner eyes. The foe may harass, but can ne'er surprise. Over him ignoble conquest win. Oh, doubt it not, if thou wouldst wear a crown. Self, baser self, must first be trampled down. So I want to thank everyone for being patient and listening to my kind of a ramble. Let me see if I can do this. The bass. At any rate, I have one of these at home. I love that sound. My wife's cats are very attentive when I do that. But again, thank you, folks, for listening to me, putting up with me. I will be glad to answer any questions or listen to any comments. I remain curious. I'm not totally set in my ways. I'm thinking that if there are any questions, I guess there's a free mic going around. This is some of my art that you're looking at here. Thank you. I was going to college at Santa Fe Institute of American Indian Arts, and I was given a choice of traditional pottery and ceramics. Traditional pottery sounds like a whole lot of pots. I mean, ceramics has more varied opportunities. So I went to the ceramics route, and I was pretty bored with clay until the instructor said, well, today we're going to do a Japanese technique called raku. The pottery, I've always seen raku in the books. It's always in a pot. And my thought was, I wonder what would happen if I did and take this and applied it to a more sculptural form. Night dancers. I refer to them as night dancers. They are images that most people will never see in real life, but will mayhap see in a dream state. Those spiritual entities that might appear in your dreams that are just totally out there. But that got me noticed and taken and launched my art career.
Thank you. My name's Gene Sievers. The raku process caught my imagination and attention my freshman year of high school. A student teacher from K-State brought that process in 1968, and it wasn't until 20 years later in a ceramics history class that I realized that it was only a couple, 3 years after the movement of Paul Solner's Americanization of the raku Japanese process, that we were doing it in the middle of Kansas at a high school in a rural community. But thank you for your message and sharing. Even though the homogeneous of our skin color, you're looking out at a quite varied group of talent and exposure and influence in who we are and what we do, and it's greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question about that in that video, your pot had a thin place, and you called attention to it. And I wondered, how do you cure that thin place without making the places beside it become thin?
You slowly work some of the thicker areas over to that thinner part, just very slowly and carefully. It's kind of difficult to move that clay when it's compressed into a wall, but it can be done.
I bet you do it very carefully.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
I'd like to hear what you're doing over in Cahokia. And they talked about Cahokia Mounds.
Oh, Cahokia. Other than art shows, it's a very, I think it's a world UNESCO site now. I'm not sure how many people have actually heard of Cahokia. Okay. Right across from the St. Louis area, in an area called the American Bottom, it was a early cosmopolitan area. They've estimated between 20 to 50,000 people lived there at one time. Some of their reasons for why it was abandoned was resource depletion, overpopulation, social social unrest. Yeah. On the other hand, as long as it lasted, I've talked to an archaeologist who's doing a dig in South Dakota, and some of the clay pots that they've dug up there have mitochondrial DNA connection back to Cahokia Mounds. And if you look at, where is this? That's some little bitty town in South Dakota, but it's several thousand mile journey in a canoe. But they estimate that they were doing industrial level collection of buffalo bone marrow to ship back to Cahokia as a food source. But it's a rather large dig. There's a museum there. They're still excavating it. And this is why this is my clan, by the way. I'm Buffalo Clan of the Cahokia people. This is entitled Cibola, because that was the real gold when the Spanish people came in and started looking for the 7 cities of Cibola on the plains. The best way to get somebody to leave you alone is say, hey, we got nothing, but I know somebody over this way that has what you're looking for. That way, everybody packs up and leaves. But that is what this is. I entitled this one Cibola, but this is the buffalo of the prairie. This was the life source. So much so that Iowa people would have 2 buffalo hunts a year in the spring and in the fall. We would, the spring and fall. We would plant our gardens and leave a small portion of the population and go out to the prairie and hunt buffalo, make meat. Better than a fair, because not everybody comes back from a buffalo hunt. Another level of courage, because you're going out there and you're hunting an animal that can just very easily run you over, gore you, leave you for nothing. I mean, if you ever stayed close to a buffalo on the other side, and this is what I'm always amazed at, the number of tourists that go to Yellowstone and insist on petting a buffalo. It's incredible. They're huge beasts. But we would go out there and make meat, come back in time to harvest our gardens maybe make another trip out, make more meat, and then hunker down through the winter. And this was when, after we had left, those people who were called Oneota and back to Cahokia Mounds. If you follow the Mississippi River and you go up into a place called Wisconsin, there's a place there called Aztlan, and it was named Aztlan by an early archaeologist because he had heard the stories of the Aztec people that said, we came from up north, a place called Aztlan. So you go up to this place that's called Aztlan, and there is a mini settlement that is based on the settlements around Cahokia Mounds. A lot of people think that that was a northern colony. So the art styles are the similar, the pottery is similar. And in that area, and they also have palisades. That was the other outstanding thing about Cahokia. They have humongous palisades, 30, 40 foot tall. Not only are they made out of wood, they were covered with clay, which would make them much harder to burn down. So that there was some pretty serious social unrest. If you look at the history of Cahokia, there are areas there, Mound 76, 72, they've uncovered 70, 80 bodies that have been decapitated. Mostly women. So this gender conflict has been going on not only worldwide, but here also. So it's a social thing. Go back to Aztlan, after they deteriorated and faded out, there was a society or social group, facet, that popped up. They were called Oneota. Oneota people spoke a Pro-Sudian language. They are the forerunners of the Winnebago, the Iowa, the Oto, a lot of Siouan speakers from that area, that culture that manifested. And the only reason it's called Oneota was they used not sand, but clamshells, silicified clamshells for temper in their pottery. They are the forerunners of a lot of the different tribes, the Kaw, the Osage, a lot of Siouan speakers. The Iowa themselves, and I'm always I'm always amused when I hear people say the Iowa Nation. We are an amalgamation of different clans. We were 7 clans that came together and decided, it would be a lot easier if we made life together instead of trying to kill each other. So we have a wolf clan that came to us and they brought the bow and arrow, but our word for the arrow, ma, our linguists have looked at it and traced it back to an Iroquois group of people, and how we use the clan lineage to differentiate between family groups. And that was how we functioned. Yes.
Reuben, thank you. I saw a number of questions came in on the chat. So there are people joining us on Zoom who enjoyed your talk and had some questions. I saw one, the poem you read was appreciated. I wonder if you could share how you came to it. And then maybe we could have Dan come on screen and read 1 or 2 of the other questions. But will you tell us about the poem you read?
Excuse me?
The poem. The poem.
Oh, the poem. I thought, since the subject for this presentation was courage, and I'm a great believer in the internet. So when it's up at the house, I will make use of it rather than comb through all my books and look for the proper poem. And it was the one poem that I seen that really encapsulated my own struggle or effort to identify those things that I was aware of, but I had no name for. You know, that inner desire to do whatever I wanted as long as I was happy, regardless of who I hurt. That base, just me, you know, I'm that greediness that I was aware of, but didn't acknowledge. And that's what captured I said, there it is, that's it. I mean, there were a lot of other poems, but I thought they were too lengthy in order to explain that thought.
Thank you for sharing it. Tell us the name again, the name of the poem.
I believe it's Alone. And the writer was, and it was brief enough to, you know, it just captured everything that I was trying to.
Maybe while Pat is looking for that, Dan is up on the screen. Dan, will you read us another question?
Sure. I had two people who asked somewhat related questions. So, what do you consider the most efficient use of your time, talents, technologies to be engaged with other curious people who want to improve the world's injustices? That's one question. And kind of a related question, what would you wish most for the world? Sort of a lasting message from your life and experience? Simple questions. Simple questions.
I love a simple question with a complex answer. The best use of my time at the moment would be expanding on the ability to improve myself. And what I would wish for the world is a general acceptance of each other, as opposed to that tireless effort to make everyone conform to one ideal. And I have a strong preference for the what is it? The Wiccan. How does that go? Do no harm, take no crap. I totally agree with that. It sums it up pretty quick. Other than learning how to get along, I really don't engage with my tribal politics in an effort to get along. If I did, it's just tiring, especially with government-funded tribal politics. They have the funding and then the people. So, any more questions? I'm way past my 20
minutes. Being
recently
retired, I greatly respect both of those concepts and goals. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, author. John Ashcombe. Yes. Author of that was John Ashcombe, A-S-K-H-A-M, Ashcombe. I think I've overgone my 20 minutes. I thank you very much. I am going to ask the organizers of this little gathering, and even anybody else that would to sign my program. I love collecting memorabilia. That will be one of my legacies, I guess. I don't know. Thank you.
I feel like I have more courage to find my place in the world and to accept that person that I find there. Well, in closing, I have a couple of messages here. All are invited to a simple lunch at Pat and Ken Ember's house in Manhattan. To honor our speaker, Reuben, Pat's prepared a big pot of soup. This is not a potluck, but we might run out of food if y'all show up. You could bring your own drink. The weather looks to be really sunny and fairly warm today, so we'll be outdoors on the patio, eating and visiting. And here at the fellowship, immediately following the service, we will enjoy coffee and share conversation in the Alsop room. I'd like to close with a poem that some of you might recognize. Whatever our sacred paths, whatever our beliefs and practices, however we gather in community, we all honor the spirit of life, the spirit of compassion, the spirit of courage, the spirit of justice, the spirit of love. How many stars are in the sky? All of them.